Today's guest is Bill Stapleton. He's one of those quiet, understated executives who simply gets things done. You know the type. He's always present but not showy. He pays attention but he isn't obvious. And when he speaks, you listen. He's an Olympic swimmer, having competed in the 200 individual medley at the Seoul Korea Games in 1988, but you won't find that on his LinkedIn page. A Texan, he attended the University of Texas at Austin, where he received not only his undergrad degree and his MBA, but also his law degree. He then became Lance Armstrong's agent for nearly 20 years. And add to that, the whole 4 years at the University of Texas, he was one of the best swimmers in the country, if not the world. He's now the founder and CEO of the Laurel Group and leading a roll-up effort to acquire live music festivals. And there's a whole lot more to this story, and we're going to hear it straight from Bill. Can't thank you enough for joining us today. Bill, welcome to the Best Boss Ever podcast.
It's great to be here, Carl. Thanks for having me.
Listen, I'd like to start with your swimming career, how you got to the UT, because as we both know, having both been swimmers, you slightly better than me. All that said, it really does set you up for an opportunity to grow in business with the discipline and the focus and the commitment that, being a world-class swimmer requires. So let's start there and we'll learn a whole lot more about how you got to where you are.
Yeah. So, Carl, I grew up in a little town called Edwardsville, Illinois. It's bigger now. It's now kind of a suburb of St. Louis, but it's a small sort of farming community, about an hour out, about 35, 40 minutes outside of downtown St. Louis. They threw me in a pool when I was in a metropolitan swim team when I was 5, and I was just faster than the other kids. And as I continued to swim, I ended up swimming at the YMCA. I'm a YMCA kid in Edwardsville. And by the time I was like 13, I was one of the best swimmers in St. Louis. And I went to a program called Sugar Creek, which was in Kirkwood, Missouri, which was an hour and 5 minutes from my home. I got up every day at 3:27 in the morning, drove to Kirkwood, or my mom did in the beginning, or my dad, and swam from 5 to 7, drove back to Edwardsville for high school, and did the whole thing again in the afternoon. And by the time I was a junior or sophomore or junior in high school, I was getting recruited by colleges. And I came down to swim in the junior nationals. You know what those are. It's not the big time nationals. It's for kids under 18. And I swam, and it was in Austin, Texas. And I met Eddie Reese. And Eddie Reese, for those who don't know, is the John Wooden of swimming. He is an incredible man. He just retired, and he saw the talent. He came to see me as a senior, watched a practice, came to dinner with my family, which probably couldn't have afforded to come to UT. I would have probably had to go to University of Illinois, and offered a full scholarship. And he had me at hello. And so I came to UT. And he's still one of my best friends today, years and years later. And I came to UT. And they put me in a weight room. I couldn't bench 100 pounds when I was a senior, maybe 100, maybe 110, something like that. But I was skinny. I weighed 50 pounds. And I'd never really been in a weight room. And he put me in a weight room. And he's an incredible coach and mentor. And he's one of those guys you just don't want to disappoint. And he was an incredible part of my life. I'll never forget. This is funny. You had Nancy Hogshead on the podcast, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So here's a Randy Reese story.
By the way, for our audience, Randy and Eddie are brothers.
They're brothers.
They were two of the most noteworthy swimming coaches globally in their heydays, if you will. Eddie at University of Texas, Randy in Central Florida.
Yeah, he was at University of Florida.
That's right.
And Randy was known as like this beast of a coach. I'm on Nancy's podcast. She talks about it, 20,000 meters a day, swimming with shoes upstream in a river, all this can we cuss on this podcast?
Well, we can.
Okay, all this crazy shit. And so in 88 at the trials, your coach, and so my Olympic trials, the 7th day of a 7-day swim meet is a 200 IM, which at that point was my best chance, right? I was second in the world, A guy named Dave Wharton was number one in the world. And as we're going in, Eddie comes into the locker room. We got, 10 minutes before I'm going to go out and swim my final race. I'd gotten fifth in the 200 fly. I'd gotten fifth in the 400 IM, not my best events. And I was supposed to make it. And he says, at the beginning of the week, Randy and I were talking about who's going to make the team in the 200 IM. And I said to him, Eddie said to him, well, it's going to be Stapleton and Wharton. And Randy laughed. He didn't think you had a chance. And that was his speech. So I went out mad.
Right.
And somehow did it. I look back at that, you look back in a business career, you look back on a high pressure moment in your life. I look back at it and I go, how did I not freak out? How did my goggles not fall off? How did I not choke? I mean, you trained so hard for so many years for something like that. And I look back at now as a 59-year-old and go, how did I do that? How do you, it's so much pressure, as you know.
Your story is not dissimilar to many stories, although you gotta love the fact that Eddie pretty much called you out in the locker room, right? He used Randy to do it, but he was saying, all right, dude, we're 7 days in, you're 0 for 2, it's your time.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's saying. He's saying, don't go blow this, man. Just
right
down there on Butterfly, come back, do it. And I think actually, if we get a little deeper into it, there's a picture of me this is my office, but there's a picture of me the minute after I made it. And it was just it was joy and it was relief.
Right.
I had a good friend.
Right. And most don't probably understand that the real pressure is making the U.S. Olympic team because it's so unbelievably competitive. Once you're on the team, then it's like, you've got a camaraderie, a crew, a posse, you're all in it together. And then you go to, in your case, Seoul, Korea, and you have an opportunity. But I would submit to anyone listening that the pressure to make the team is far more intense than the pressure once you're on the team.
Well, and I would tell you, I think one of the questions you might ask me later is, one of the mistakes I think I've made in my life. That pressure was so much. And back then, they put about 7 weeks between the trials and the Olympics. It's now much different. Now they'll do it in, months before. And I got sick at the Olympics. But beyond that, I think I did not properly readjust my goals when I made the team because I was so relieved. It was like, yeah, I'd love to win a medal, but I made the team. And that's, I wish I had, maybe been a little bit more serious about training and doing what I needed to do in those 7 weeks. That's a terrible timeline. The 88 team, looking back on all the Olympic teams, was not the best Olympic team because of the timing they put us under. But I learned from that, I needed to readjust my goals. I broke the American record. I got beat, so I didn't technically break it, but I broke Pablo Morales's American record, and I got beat by half a second. And I look back at it, and I think I stepped off the gas.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll elaborate on that a little bit more. So is it fair to say, Bill, that, as we sort of look at now your post-athletic career and in business, that Eddie had the most impact on you as a leader, as a mentor, as a practical matter, your coach and boss?
Coach, boss, leader, world compass, all of it. Incredible man. We still have lunch probably once a month. He just retired from UT.
Wow.
He is the most, we won 14 national championships. He won 14, probably, has had more impact on my life than any other mentor, boss, leader. Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's, many Olympians I rather think might say the same thing. We're all blessed to have even gotten to the Olympic trials, let alone make an Olympic team and have a coach, mentor, figure that you trust, and you basically do whatever she or he says. And it's It's an amazing relationship. So I applaud you for that. So you get back from Seoul, I don't know how many years, but do you have your law degree when you go to Seoul, or do you have to go back
I,
to
I,
school?
so I graduated undergrad in 80, fall of 87. The Olympics were 88. I took the spring semester off. So it was 88 spring. It's the first time I hadn't been in school. Started business school in 88. And then I went to law school after that. And so
So you did a 2 year MBA and then a 3 year law degree?
I did. There's a combo you can do,
There
but
is a combo. I was going to go there.
I got into business school and I was still kind of swimming, but not that serious. And I was like, this is college. Like, I had a friend who had a boat. We go out to Lake Austin in the afternoon, and I was like, this is like my college. So then I got done with business school and I still didn't want to grow up. And I decided to go to law school. I took the LSAT on a whim. Got into actually the athletic director, DeLoss Dodds, another hero of mine.
Whoa.
I
Classic.
Oh my God. Amazing guy. He finds out that I was an out of state student, very hard to get into UT Law. I got into Georgetown, I got waitlisted at Harvard, and I got declined at UT. And he calls me in to his office and he says, if I do something about this, are you going to go to UT? I'm like, hell yeah, I don't want to leave Austin. I mean, yeah, I think I'm going to go to Georgetown because I'm sure I'm not going to get into Harvard, right? And a week later, I got a letter from the dean of the law school saying they'd made a mistake. And to this day, I've had drinks with DeLoss. I think he threatened his like season tickets or
Yeah,
something.
right. I mean, there was some.
Like they won't let any athletes in here. Why? And there was one guy that had gotten in, like football player, who had gotten in like 5 years before me, flunked out, and he's like, if they won't let you in, they're never going to let anybody in. So if I pull this off, are you coming? I'm like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so that's how I ended up there.
That's a great
That's how
story.
I met my current wife. Yeah. Same section of law school.
The hits just keep on coming. That's great to
Yeah.
hear.
There you go.
So, okay, so you get out of law school and now you're a lawyer with an MBA.
Mm-hmm.
An admirable, noteworthy combination. And I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned at the top that you were Lance's agent for the better part of 20 years. Another amazing story. And, there's all kinds of Lance Armstrong lore in the marketplace. So how do you become Armstrong's agent and obviously confidant because you were with him for,
Yep.
you
It's a
know,
great question.
a
So
long time?
I get to the law firm. It's at the time it was the biggest law firm in Austin. And they do this like they have a consultant come in to talk about uh, creating business for the firm. And at the time it was I started in my class with a guy who played in the NFL. And so him and I talk and we're like, why don't we go pitch him on a sports thing? You know, we'll do sports agents inside the firm. So we did, and they bought into it. They gave us a budget. And, this is one of the stories I think is important about life. So we signed a couple football players. I didn't know anything about football. And I was a teaching assistant in business school and law school for a guy that had MS, but he was like literally every year at the business school at UT voted number one professor. Everybody loved him. His name was Frank Cross. I miss him. And he calls me one day when I'm at the law firm and he's like, you ever heard of Lance Armstrong? And I'm like, yeah, that bike rider that, won the world championship that moved to Austin. Yeah, I've never met him. And he said, well, he's looking for an agent. And a guy in my class right now, my MBA, he taught business law, is helping him find one. Do you want to meet him? I was like, hell yeah, I do. And so I met Lance. And, he hadn't won the tour, obviously, by then. He hadn't had cancer, but he was riding for back then was called Team Motorola. He was making $1 million a year in salary. He was a big deal. And he was a high school swimmer. That's where he started. He was a distance swimmer in high school. Not a very good one, but he was. And Frank made the introduction, and I met Lance in 1994. And he was interviewing agents. And in the end, 6 months later, it came down to Lee Steinberg, IMG, and me. Those were the three options. And I'd been in it for 6 months. And at one point during that period, he called me and he said, look, I don't know what I'm going to do here, but Giro, which is a helmet company, wants to do a deal with me. What if I just pay you for that and see how it goes? I was like, sure. So I did that. And then he called me like a month later and said, well, how would this work? And I said, well, I got two things to say to you. We'll sign a two-page contract. You can end at any time, and I won't have any like add on. If you fire me, the fees go away. A lot of times in the sports agent world, you cut a deal with Nike, right? It lasts for until it's it, you know.
There's a long tail.
Yeah, and sometimes it even includes renewals, right? I was like, two-page contract, and he goes, well, Lee Steinberg wants to do this. I'm like, yeah. So I tell you what, if I don't know, I can't remember who it was. It's Steve Young and Joe Montana and you call Lee Steinberg on a Monday morning. What order are those phone calls going to get returned in? And he's like, it's pretty good bullshit. You call me on a Monday morning, right? You're the first call back. So we started a relationship in June of 1995 that lasted a really long time. Yeah.
Great story. Great story. Prior to you and Lance cementing your relationship, I was neck deep in the sport of triathlon.
Well, that's right.
Okay, so way back, I create this triathlon format, which becomes the Olympic format. And along the way, late 80s, Armstrong shows up and he entered, and he competed in the professional division. And we all knew him as a cyclist, but somebody, I want to say it might even have been Molina, one of the big four at the time, which was Dave Scott, Mark Allen, Scott Tinley, Scott Molina. And on any given Sunday, one of those guys was winning somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
So I think, and I can't recall. Well, one of those guys said, "Yeah, no, this kid's got some swimming chops. He's legit." And I can't recall, frankly, Bill, if he actually won the race, but he was among the top three. And we all went, "Holy cow, this guy has a future." And it was, I'm not going to say one and done, but a very narrow window where he competed in triathlon and then migrated fully into this world of cycling. And everybody knows the rest of that story.
So I think that's an important point.
Yeah. I mean, so he was a multi-sport athlete and obviously legit. He goes through the cancer exercise. Most people know that story. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about that period of time where he won 7 consecutive Tour de France races, fought the French government for years and years and years. And it turns out that there was a there.
Yeah. So I will say this, and I'm happy to talk as much as you want about this. I'm not close with Lance anymore. We play golf once every 6 months. He, I think, has done an amazing job of reshaping his life. I'm on Team Lance. If somebody came to me in 1993 or 4 and said, there's a supplement, if you look at it that way, that everyone in the Peloton is taking, and it makes them 5% better. As an Olympic athlete, if somebody had said that to me, I'd have done the same thing. Now, there were mistakes that got made after, right? Attacking people, other things. But if people listen to that and they go, well, what's 5%? Well, my Olympic event took about 120 seconds. And let's assume it's much less aerobic, it's more anaerobic. Let's just assume it makes me 1% better. That's over a second. Gold medal around my neck, right? And so he didn't do anything that nobody else did. There were 199 guys. He gave me his jersey. I still have his jersey from the first Tour de France. They were the worst team, and his number was 191. And 5% over 5 hours is a lot. So I don't judge him for that. I think And there's not one athlete, not one cyclist that rode in his era that doesn't know he was the boss and the best. Take EPO or not, you could do it either way. He's the best. And he was. And that's 100% true. Ask Jan Ulrich what he thinks.
Yeah,
Ask
right.
Ask Marco Pantani what he thinks, right? He was better than they were. He's I think like I'll tell you, I was ranked second in the world in my event. He was so much more of a world-class athlete than I was. It was shocking. And so that's where I go with Lance.
Right. Right. And I totally get that. I mean, if it's a level playing field if everybody's doing it, whether it's 1% or 20%, it doesn't matter. If everybody's doing it, the cream still rises to the.
And he did. He won the 93 World Championships as a he would have been he was born in 72, so he's 21 years old. He wasn't taking EPO then. Um, he's that good. He was that good. He's that special. If he had not gotten this lifetime ban, I am certain he would have won the Ironman. I'll tell you a
Wow.
funny story. I'll tell you a funny story. So, yes, he would have won it. He was on his way. He was training for it. He did a triathlon in Hawaii, a half Ironman, in like 2013 or 14, and he convinced me to do it. And so you don't do the swim part is actually halfway to Javi where the ride goes. So
Mm-hmm.
you go around this beautiful bay. It's like literally swimming in an aquarium. And so the pros start 2 minutes before they did a mass start. It wasn't an age group. There weren't enough people, but they do a mass start. So I got up kind of to the front, let the pros go. And I'm like, I'm a pretty good swimmer, so I'm going to get up in front and try to not, be swimming over people the whole time. It was a lollipop we had to do out and around like that. Um, so uh, we start, and within a minute, I'm catching some of the pros. We go all the way around, and then I see this group of 5 guys all have the same cap on. Like they were college swimmers, and I just roll over and draft off them all the way around, right? And we're passing pros that are not good swimmers that probably can run a half marathon in an hour and a half, right? And so we get all the way around, and we're headed for the shore. And I realized, like, I can drop these guys. I'll be the first guy out of the water. This is going to be awesome. It'll be my whole story because I'm not a good bike rider and I'm a terrible runner. And the guy comes up on the paddleboard. I'm about 100 yards from the beach, and he says, "You guys missed a buoy." And I'm like, "Okay, what does that mean?" It was my first triathlon I'd ever done. I'm like, "So what do I do? Do I just get a time penalty?" He's like, "No, you got to go back around." So I go back around, blah blah blah, get back into the masses, get on the bike. And I get on the bike. I finish my, what is it, 56 miles for, okay. And my wife has this video of me putting my running shoes on. And I said, "Man, how's Lance doing?" And she's like, "He won." I'm like, wait, 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 wait. He's done? Yeah.
Right.
He's taking an ice bath in the hotel room, and I have a half marathon to run. It's like, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. I
Super
get it.
talent. Super talent.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, two questions. While you're agenting for Lance, are you still with the law firm? Or at some point, did you go out on your own as a representation lawyer? And who else, other than Lance, did you and NFL guy pitch to get into the fold as a sports agent?
So we're at the law firm. So I started there in 94. Started representing Lance in 95. And so one thing Lance Armstrong wanted when I signed him, Nike deal. I want a Nike deal. And I must have called this guy named Scott McCachran, who ran AGC back then at ACG at Nike 15 times. And he finally calls me back and he's like, "All right, you have a minute. Pitch me." I'm like, "This guy's the greatest athlete on the fucking planet." I'm sorry, I keep cussing. And we did a deal with Nike for $30,000. and all the product he wanted. And he was happy. But $30,000, when you're working on a 15% fee, you can do that math. It's not a lot of money, right?
Hmm.
And the firm finally came to me and my football guy in like 97 and said, "You're just not making enough money. You guys are both good lawyers. If you want to stick around and give that up, you're both on partnership track." I was doing both. I was being a lawyer, young lawyer, an associate, like taking depositions and things like that. And we'll give you 6 months. I chose to go and worked out of my house. And in 98, after he had cancer, went through all that with him, he made a comeback. And he actually got, I think if I remember this right, he got third in the Tour of Spain, which is there's 3 grand tours: Spain, Italy, and France. He got third, and I was still representing him. And I left the firm, just took a bet on the guy. I just knew it. I knew this guy was special. He wins the tour in 99. And the managing partner leaves me a message on I guess, my cell phone in 99. Who knows? But he's like, "We are the stupidest idiots. Like, this guy just won the Tour de France, and we gave up on you a year early." And so I started a little company, all based around Lance, called Capital Sports and Entertainment in 99. And we did some work in the golf world, represented some guy named Larry Rinker, who was always known as Mr. 125 because he'd be right on the top 125, get their tour card back.
Right.
And some other sports, women beach volleyball
All
players.
right.
But Lance was always the focus. And so then in 2001, in 99, I met a guy named Charlie Jones. Charlie was a small local concert promoter here in Austin. He did the Millennium Celebration in 2000 for the city. And he produced the 1999 Congratulations Lance event here in Austin, which was a parade down Congress Avenue and a little concert on Auditorium Shores. And he came to me and said, Clear Channel at the time, which is now Live Nation, is trying to hire me. I have this idea. I think we should do a New Orleans Jazz Fest style festival in Zilker Park. I was like, "You're never going to get the city to give you Zilker Park. But if you do, let's talk," right? And we got to be close friends. He came back 2 weeks later and he's like, "Okay, I got the park." I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And so basically, Lance Armstrong's fees funded the first Austin City Limits Music Festival. And we made money on it, the first one. And so that's how we got there. That's how we got all the way there.
All right. So that explains the bridge from sport to music. Now let's sort of dial into music. I mean, I've got with Universal Studios and Tickets.com and most recently ASM Global on my CV, no stranger to the world of music. Live Nation AEG presents, from festivals to stadium shows to, large scale arena touring acts. You are instrumental, obviously, in the launch of Austin City Limits, which was still a noteworthy brand in the music space. Help us understand how you went from Capital Sports Group and Austin City Limits to where you are now at the Laurel Group.
Yeah, so let's start with I mean, you didn't ask this question, but one of the other mentors in my life is a woman named Mary Beth Rogers. She was the CEO of KLRU, which is the public television station here in Austin that 50 years ago started Austin City Limits television show. It's the longest long format live music show in history, right? And so we, at the time, were considering a name for this thing we were going to do in Zilker Park. And I was on this board called the Future of Austin City Limits. I got put on it probably because I was Lance's agent, right? I'm 30. Everyone else is my age now, right? Bankers, investment bankers, And we leave the meeting, and Mary Beth calls me and says, "You didn't say anything." And I was like, "Yeah, I was just trying to get my sea legs. Like, I'm a lot younger than everybody." And she says, "I really want you to tell me what you think about our brand. Can we go to lunch?" We go to lunch, and she's this amazing woman. And she says, "What do you think?" And I said, I think you're effed. That's what I think. I think you haven't had, you mean, and this goes all the way back to the first Austin City Limits taping was Willie Nelson in the 70s, right? But they hadn't had a current act on that television show in years. And I figured out pretty quickly that this board I was on was a fundraising committee because it cost $2 million a year to produce the television show, and they were raising like 1.2 and they couldn't pay for it. And I said, "Well, I got an idea. What if we guaranteed you a little bit of money? We licensed the name, and you guys and we rebranded you, and we'll make our headliners tape the show." Um, she was like, "Okay, show me that." So we did. We guaranteed them $50,000 a year for 3 years. Um, and I think 2% of ticket sales. Um, and year one in 2002, this is something when I go to UT a lot and talk to students, and I say this they have a 0 batting average on this one. If you can tell me who the headliner of the first ACL festival was, I'll give you 2 free tickets, which are now worth $360 or something, to the festival, and no one's ever gotten it. It was the Archangels, Charlie Sexton's band. Yeah, right? No one's ever gotten it. But we made money year one, and I went in to see her the week after and gave her a check for 123 grand. And the rest is history. And so I spent all that time, working for Lance, but working in the music world. And in 2000, I guess 6 or 7, a guy named Scott Blackman, who ran the U.S. Olympic Committee, actually.
That's right.
Scott? He was working for Phil at AEG, and he asked if he could come see me. And he sits down on my couch and he says, "We want to give you $50 million for your music business." And I'm honest to God, I mean, this is crazy, Carl. I went to business school, I went to law school. I didn't even know what EBITDA was. I'm like, "Well, why?" And he said, "Well, we think you guys are doing 8 million and we're going to pay you whatever that is, 6.5 times." And so we got into it. And Charlie Jones and Charles Attal had a relationship, the two C's and C3 had a relationship with a guy named Charlie Walker at Live Nation, and they started looking at it. And we ultimately made the decision it had gotten, and I'm probably different than a lot of your guests because I never really wanted to run a huge organization, and it had gotten big. It's not my specialty. And Walker is exactly the guy that knows how to do that. And so what we did was we spun it off into C3 Presents. He left Live Nation. He got an equity deal, and he started running C3 basically in 2007 or 8. And so at that point I was just an owner. I wasn't an operator anymore. And he did a great job with it. He did an amazing job with it. We sold it back to Live Nation in 2015.
So you never did the deal with Blackman in AEG.
Nope. We said no. We said no to Live Nation, and AEG offered us kind of the same. Walker came in and within 7 years sold it for 6 times more than that, something like that.
Boy.
He crushed it. He's one of the best business people I've ever met. He did a great job with it, and I could have never figured that out. And so then after that, did a little bit of hospitality work here in Austin. We built a couple hotels. Me and my partner Bart, who had started CSE years ago and ran the cycling team and all that. And I was in charge of raising money for that. And I raised I don't know, 35 million bucks for hotels and restaurants here in Austin. And then I kind of timed out because and I've had a non-linear career, right? I didn't go work at Nike for 30 years. And Bart and I sat down and I'm like, if we're not raising money, I don't want to operate. He's a much better sort of team manager and operator than I am. And I ended up going to see, I don't know if I'm going to bore you with this story, but you know the name Harvey Schiller?
Who doesn't?
Okay. So for the people that don't, Harvey, Air Force General at 48, then became the head of the U.S. Olympic Committee. That's how I met him. Then ran the SEC, then ran Turner Sports, and then ran Yankee Nets. He's a legend, right? And Harvey and I have been close for ever since. He's one of those people that he walks in a room and you're like, wow, just drip. You need to have him on your podcast, and I will set that up.
That would be awesome.
Okay, dripping.
I'm going to hold you to that one.
It just drips charisma and leadership. And so every time I went to New York in those days, I'd always have breakfast at the same place with Harvey. And it was someplace in Midtown. You'd see like all the movers and shakers, right? And so when I left the hospitality business, I went up to see him and we sit down to breakfast and he says, "What are you doing in town?" And usually it would be like, "Oh, I got a meeting with Sony. I got a blah, blah, blah." I said, "I'm here to see you. I mean, I'll tell you the truth. My wife's with me. We went and saw Hamilton last night, but I'm here to talk to you. I'm trying to figure out what I should do next. I'm a little lost." And he said, "Wow, that is flattering. And let's talk." And so him and I talked about a number of things. And he had a home in Charleston, South Carolina, and a big house in New York. And a week later, he calls and says, "Look, there's this startup investment bank in Charleston, and I'd like you to come meet them." And I did. And they hired me to run their sports media and entertainment group. So I learned the investment banking business. I passed. They didn't tell me I was going to have to take a bunch of tests, but
Right.
yeah. And and they put me on the management committee. And then about 3 years ago, one of the other guys on the management committee, I'll tell you about my partners, they're incredible, and two of us, decided to leave and start our own merchant bank. So my partners are a guy named John McAvoy, who was he started at Lehman Brothers. He's a Wake and Duke guy that spent his whole career on Wall Street. He ran the London office of Credit Suisse, so he's got all the financial chops. My other partner, I call him our resident genius. He went to MIT, and then he was number one at UCLA Law,
Yay.
editor in chief of the Law Review, maybe the smartest person I've ever met in my whole life. And we formed the Laurel Group. And we spent the first couple of years doing M&A work. So you know that drill, right? And most of it was in the entertainment world based on my background. So we got hired to sell a Canadian music festival. We did some work in the restaurant world. Bryce, the guy I was just mentioning, his family, his wife's dad started Hillstone. So he has a bunch of restaurant experience. So we've done some work in the restaurant world. And we came up with this idea, John did actually, about a year ago, to instead of just doing M&A work, to raise a fund to buy music festivals. And so there's this spot in the music festival business right now where for a company like AG or Live Nation to look at a festival that's making, really making less than 5 million in EBITDA, it's just a lot of work for not a lot of return. For us, it's the sweet spot. So we have put together 5 or 6 already that are making between, they all make between like 800 and 2 million. I can't say the names of them yet, and we've got a lot of private equity interested in our idea. It's grown a little bit. So the idea has grown and the idea was not just a roll up. It was, we will come in and put a corporate team together of people that I've worked with my career in sponsorship, marketing, ticketing, all the
Right.
things that small festival promoters are just, they're not good at.
Right. You play not only an investment role, but you play a strategic role.
That's right.
Your traditional line of PE or VCs don't. They're
That's
financial
right.
engineers.
They're sitting on a board, they're
Right.
saying yes or no.
No,
The
I love
idea
that. I love that
is
strategic aspect to it because,
create real strategic value.
right.
And then in the last, I don't know, 6 weeks, it kind of hit me. I'm like, are there the worst thing for concert promoters to do that are small promoters is the booking part. They call CAA, they call UTA, they call WME, right? And I mean, how
Or
much?
they call Live Nation, or they call AEG Presents.
Yeah, how much does Noah Khan cost? Well, he costs $3 million. Well, why? They have no data, they have no bargaining power. So the idea is now to not only buy the festivals, but buy some real booking agencies, independent booking agencies that get hired on a 5 or 10% fee. Then maybe layer in. We just were going through this morning with a private equity firm, maybe layer in merchandising, other things that are part of the music world that are independent, and just create an agency that sort of stays out of the way of Live Nation and AG, not trying to go take them on, but creates a little more buying power and scale with companies like CAA and UTA and WME. And so that's what we're doing. And
Got it.
it's been fun.
Well, we could spend a whole hour just on that last 2 minutes you just shared. But we're coming up on the bewitching hour here, Bill. We've got a few minutes left, and I want to ask you our three hot questions. You alluded to the first one a bit ago. Your favorite mistake. This is the one you learned the most from. And if it's that preparation moment in Seoul, elaborate on that a second. If not, what?
I got a better one.
Okay.
So in 2006 or 7, before we bought, right as we were bringing Charlie Walker into the company, but wasn't his fault. He didn't plan it. We had done ACL for 3 years. It was making money. We did Lollapalooza. So it was probably the first year of Lollapalooza, we lost money. Went to the mayor and said, if you give us a 5-year contract, we'll come back. Starting to make money there. Thought we were kind of invincible. Decided to do a country festival in College Station, Texas, where Texas A&M is, and absolutely got crushed. Didn't really know the country market, didn't really do the math around, sort of how many hotel rooms there were and how that was all going to work. And that's probably, in terms of business, that's probably the biggest mistake. Was called Big State Fest. Never to be heard about again.
Right.
We will not speak about it anymore.
Okay. Noted.
Okay. Yes.
All right. Well, so Mr. Music Man, this is a music question. This is the favorite live concert show festival where a female artist or a female led band was the headliner.
Yeah, so I'm a Swiftie, and my daughters, I've seen Taylor, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. I think she's incredible. She's never played a festival, but I've seen her here in Austin. My daughter's 16th birthday, we saw her in Nashville. She played the song Tim McGraw, and he pops up out of the thing and sings it with her. I'm a huge Taylor fan, and I think she's the greatest female performer. And I'm pissed that I did not go see the Eras. I didn't go see it.
You didn't go see the Era Tour.
I'm still upset about it.
Well, she played a whole bunch of venues that ASM Global managed on the Eras Tour, including when she launched her European segment in Stockholm, ASM venue in Stockholm, Sweden. And I know maybe 20 people who all in the Northeast who flew to Stockholm to see Taylor Swift because, one, ticket prices were more manageable, and two, you couldn't get a ticket here in the U.S.
No, I could have though. I could have. I obviously could have.
Clearly,
but I didn't, and I just kept thinking, all right, she's going to be in L. My daughter went to see her at SoFi in L.A.
Right.
I have 3 daughters, but I just never got around to it, and so that could be one of my biggest mistakes. I mean, My buddy Charlie Jones, who I started ACL with, called it, he went to see her in New Orleans with his daughter. He called it a 3-hour Super Bowl show.
Yeah. I mean,
Incredible.
and everybody who sees her says the same thing.
Yeah.
It just, that's how it is. So
Yeah.
not surprised to hear that one, especially because you have daughters.
Yeah.
Last one. This is the one I actually like the best. Words matter. We all know it. It's what you say. It's what you don't say. It's how you say it. So in all of the sort of word salad world, what's your favorite word and why?
Joy. Couple of reasons. I have something here in my office. It's a picture from the first ACL festival. And it was on the front page of the Austin American Statesman the Monday after we did it. And there's a dude holding up a sign and it says, "I am happy." And I went to my partners and I'm like, there you go. That's the point. But for me, also, joy is family. It's the most important thing to me. I have 4 kids, and that's where I get most of my joy. And I think it's a good way to wake up every morning and think, okay, I know I got to go work out. I know I got this. I know I got that. But how am I going to find a little bit of joy in my day? And that, to me, is the magic in my life.
I love that. That attitude adjustment when you get out of bed and you put joy front and center, only good things come next, right? Regardless of the daily grind, quote unquote. I love to hear that, Bill. It's been joyful, actually, to have this conversation with you. I super appreciate your willingness to be so generous with your time. Great stories. I'm going to hold you to the Harvey Schiller thing, but I can't thank you enough.
Send me an email. I'll introduce you, for sure.
All right, man. I can't thank you enough for being a guest on The Best Boss Ever.
Well, thank you, Carl. It was great. Appreciate it.